ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today.
Mr. Secretary, first of all, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with congratulating you for the award you got today from the settlement movement. It's a great honor to have you. And I wanted to start and asking regarding the Abraham Accords. It's been a year now, and the results so far have been amazing. The normalization with the UAE, with Bahrain, potentially Sudan, Morocco. Where are you seeing this going?
So it is truly remarkable. Peace between these countries that people didn't imagine could take place. The theory was if we didn't solve the Palestinian conflict that we couldn't make peace, and yet in the Trump administration we were able to do that. Great leaders from President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, Crown Prince in the Emirates, and the leadership in Bahrain all came together. Now you can see people have embraced this. I believe this is here to stay. I think it makes life better, more prosperous, more peaceful, less risk of war. It's a good thing for all of the people in the region. I think more countries ultimately will decide it's the right thing for them to recognize Israel as well.
Now, speaking of the region, we're seeing a lot of strife and a lot of danger coming from Iran these days, especially with the announcements of the nuclear bomb being basically days away. Like a lot of chatter coming from Prime Minister Bennett, from Defense Minister Gantz. A lot of them are saying that the nuclear bomb is imminent. Do you see this potential? This is a potential alliance also for the more moderate states coming together against Iran?
Well, it was very clear that we had isolated the Iranians in ways that hadn't happened before. Most all of the Gulf states, Israel, the United States, working together to prevent Iran from moving down this pathway towards not only just a bomb, but a nuclear weapons program, much more dangerous to the world. We denied them resources. We put real sanctions in place on them. This had an impact on that leadership. And we've seen, frankly, the United States administration change paths. They're negotiating with them in Vienna, even as we sit here today. This is a regime that put Ibrahim Raisi, a butcher, in charge of their country. These are not people who want to be part of the international community. These are terrorists who threaten not only Israel, but the United States, and in fact, peace-loving people all across the world. We should be putting real pressure on the regime, not negotiating a deal with them.
And speaking of the Biden administration, we're seeing President Biden talking about reopening the mission to East Jerusalem, and in fact, trying to reverse some of the amazing accomplishments you guys have been putting forward. How do you see that?
So these were all of a piece, right? Our deep relationship with Israel, the decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the decision to acknowledge the Golan Heights, what I went to Judea and Samaria for today, which is to acknowledge that Israel's not an occupying nation. This is the Jewish homeland. This administration is trying to flip the switch on all of those. The decision about the consulate, I think, would be illegal. I don't think they have the ability to actually do that. We don't have a consulate in a capital where we have an embassy from the United States. So it would be a very odd thing to do as well. We don't need it. We shouldn't reward the Palestinians. They're still paying terrorists for slaying people. They're still conducting terror campaigns. These are a set of corrupt leaders. The Palestinian leaders are corrupt today. We shouldn't be rewarding them by establishing a consulate in Jerusalem to have a liaison relationship with them. We should be trying to convince them that they too should join the movement towards peace.
But we're seeing also a lot of strife coming in from Congress, especially from the fringe Democrat movement, especially from Representatives Omar, AOC, Rashida Tlaib. We're seeing a lot of strife from them, especially saying that every move now towards Israel should be sanctioned, should be conditioned only with Israel ending the occupation. Doesn't it sound like they're trying to reverse everything pretty much?
I think that's true. I also wish it was just the fringe of the Democrat Party. I wish it was just limited to those three. You saw the other day that the simple decision to continue to support a defensive weapon system called Iron Dome, right? A pretty basic tool that frankly had been bipartisan for all of these years. Republicans and Democrats alike understood that not only would Israeli lives be saved, but Palestinian lives, Americans living in Israel, traveling to Israel. And we saw the Democrat Party reject this. This is really dangerous. It's certainly anti-Zionist. It borders on anti-Semitism, and I'm seeing this seep across the boundaries of our liberal Democrat Party inside the United States. It troubles me greatly. This relationship shouldn't be a relationship between just Republicans and Israel. This should be between the United States and Israel, and I pray that it will come back that way.
Mr. Secretary, last question. Will we see you still as part of the future relationship in Israel with the governments in the future, hopefully?
You can count on my continued support for a relationship between the United States and Israel. Who knows what role that will be in? Today I'm here just as an American citizen coming to share my deep and abiding love for this really special place here in Israel. I'll stay in this fight. It is really important. It's important for Israel. As an evangelical Christian, I love this place. It's important for the United States, and it's important for the greater Middle East to have a strong relationship between our two democratic nations as well.
Mr. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today.